Hi, thank you for joining us today. We are excited to start this presentation about understanding Erasmus plus internships. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to write it in the chat that you see on the YouTube channel, and we will be happy to answer the questions. So my name's Erin. I work in the International Office at the Faculty of Social Studies. I will be giving you the practical information about what it means to do the stuff for the university for getting funding and everything like that. Normally, my colleague Dagmar Habava would be with us today. However, she is not able to join us, but she is the expert and is able to help the most with Erasmus plus internships, anything with mobilities at the Faculty of Social Studies. If you are not a Faculty of Social Studies student, feel free to ask some questions as well, but we might not be able to be as direct because some things are faculty specific. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I'm joined with my colleague, Eva, who I will now let introduce herself.
Hello, yes, I'm in the Conflict and Democracy Studies program, finishing up at the Faculty of Social Studies, and I'm currently on an Erasmus traineeship or internship. The words are going to be interchangeable here, so if you see both, it's the same thing. Yeah, I am currently on a 3-month full-time internship in Greece at the European Public Law Organization. It's between Athens and Lagrena, which is a small village in Greece, but it's my final semester. So I actually finished my studies last semester, and I'm currently extending my studies for 1 semester so that I will take my state exams and submit my final version of my thesis at the end of this semester, but I'm not currently taking any classes. So that's just a brief introduction, but I'll talk more about my experience later, so we can continue.
Thank you. So just a couple key points to keep in mind throughout this presentation. We are talking about internships abroad. The faculty, the university in general, definitely supports students participating on internships at any point, but these specific opportunities are those done outside the Czech Republic. Also, something for our international students to keep in mind is the funding opportunities that we are discussing. You can't get funded to do an internship in your home country. So for example, Eva's from the US. If she wanted to go to the US and do an internship, she wouldn't be able to use funding for doing that, but going to Greece is fine. You also must be a current student when applying for these opportunities. So that's just something also to keep in mind. And we'll talk about that, why that's important in a little bit more detail. But just definitely, you can't take a leave of absence, for example, and do an internship to that. You have to have that current student status. And then we'll be discussing not just the Erasmus Plus traineeship opportunities, but also a different opportunity called Free Mover, and we'll explain the differences between those two. And the key thing that we want all students to always keep in mind is just your timeline that you have for your internships. So if you, whether or not doing it during the summer or during the semester, that's something that you should keep in mind for yourself based on when your classes are and what you can fit into your academic schedule. So to be a little bit more specific about the Erasmus Plus traineeship, this is any internships within the 27 EU member states plus 6 additional countries. So if you are considering doing an internship in any of those countries, this is definitely the first opportunity that you should look into. Your internship has to be between 2 to 12 months. So it can't be less than 2 months, and it also cannot be longer than 12. And because it's an Erasmus Plus traineeship, while you can almost have an internship anywhere, it can't be any European Union institution. So you could not intern at the European Parliament or European or like the Erasmus at the European level or anything like that. So just keep that in mind as well. There's some limitations of where your internship can be, and that's just based on the funding. You do get between 600 to 699 euros per month, which is great. That can kind of substitute the living costs. And this is not affected if you, for example, are also paid. So you don't need to worry about that having an impact into whether or not you get the scholarship. I would definitely emphasize that the opportunity for internships completed after graduation with this. This is a really, really great opportunity for our students. So for example, if you are graduating this semester, so you'll end your state exams in January, and you want to spend the next 10 months in an internship, that is something you can do. You just will need to start the process, get everything signed and everything before you finish your studies. So when we say after graduation, it's not after the graduation ceremony, but it's after your studies have ended. So again, if your state exam and your thesis defense are on like January 22nd, that means that everything will need to be signed before January 22nd. This is really just a great opportunity for students to participate in if they were not able to do an internship during their actual studies. So what I want to discuss next, sorry, I'm just having a little technical difficulties, is the upcoming deadline. So what happens with the Erasmus Plus traineeship? There are 4 deadlines throughout the year. So you don't need to apply one time for the whole entire year, but you do need to make sure that you have applied prior, like the deadline meets when you will start the internship. So for example, if you want to be interning in spring 2022, the next deadline to apply for the funding is January 31st, but that means that your placement cannot start before March 15th. So that means that if you want to intern in the spring, you have to do an internship starting after March 15th so that you can get the funding for it. If you had wanted to start earlier in the spring, you would have had to meet the October deadline. So you can see that there are deadlines in April, June, October, and January generally. If you have any questions, Dagmar is able to answer your questions later on, but throughout this presentation, you can, again, write the questions in the chat and we will be happy to answer them. So I want to talk a little bit about the free mover traineeship. This is going to be connected to, this is basically, if you do not meet the requirements of the Erasmus Plus internship, you can apply for the free mover. You can go anywhere in the world. It can be in Europe as well, but it is ideal that you go with the Erasmus Plus if you're within the EU member states. However, if you did get an internship at, for example, the European Parliament and you want funding, the free mover scholarship is eligible for this. So that is a way that you can kind of play around with both of these options and figure out which is the best for you. The length of stay is from 1 month to a semester long, but it can be extended. So if your internship is longer than 6 months, you can make it longer than that. And the scholarship is up to 16,000 crowns per month. It depends on the country that you'd be going to. Now, these deadlines are a little bit more specific or a little bit different. So the deadline for is December 15th for placements for the whole calendar year, so spring and autumn. So that's great. If you actually have an internship that you just got accepted into that starts in January, you can actually still apply for the free mover because that is because there's still time to do that. And it goes on a rolling basis, so you can apply throughout the process. But then if you have an internship for autumn, you have until September 30th to apply. The key thing to keep in mind is that you just want to make sure that you're meeting the deadlines with all of these traineeships. So now that's the technical information, how you can get the funding and everything like that. But Eva is going to talk a little bit more about how to actually get an internship. So I will let her take over for that.
Yeah, so this is hopefully going to be useful for anyone who is interested in doing an internship but hasn't found one independently before and maybe doesn't know where to start. So some of this might be repeated for some people, but yeah, I hope it's useful. So because this is much more independent than like a traditional Erasmus study that people usually talk about, you do have to find the position yourself. And that's really the first area where you should concentrate your efforts. So make sure your CV is updated. Make sure that you are ready to get everything moving and find places that you can apply to. There's 2 different ways to sort of search for positions that might be open. The first one is in some kind of internship database, which is a website or some forum where organizations or companies that want to hire an intern will make a posting about it. In the ISOIS, the online system for this, you will find some postings, for example. A lot of them do require check, and it's not updated so often, so this isn't really something to rely on, but again, it's worth having a look if you are looking anyway. There's erasmusintern.org, which is probably the biggest database for this type of internship. You can sort by subject, you can sort by everything. The biggest limitation is just going to be that a lot of places won't post there. So I think it's a good place to start. It's a good place to find keywords so that you can continue your search. And it's a good place to maybe discover some company or organization that you wouldn't have found on your own by searching, or maybe to get interested in a country that you wouldn't have considered going to. But definitely don't limit your search if you're serious about it. Unless you find the perfect thing, you're going to have to continue searching elsewhere. So the other way is to really get good with search engines. I gave a couple of examples of places to start, such as research universities in Spain. If you really want to go to Spain and you want to work under some professor there, it's a good place to find out what all of those universities are, and then look into what professors are there, and then figure out if they might be looking for an intern. Again, one thing that I did was just searching lists of NGOs by country, because I'm really interested in, for example, NGOs that facilitate democracy or educate people about democracy. So I started from this long list of NGOs in some random country, looked into what each of them is doing, and then when you get on the website, you can look if they have a posting specifically about interns. For example, Radio Free Europe, it's in the Czech Republic, so this isn't a suggestion for you, but it's a good example of a website that's doing the kind of work that we might be interested in Faculty of Social Studies, that just has that information on the website. So it has a person to contact, it has the general terms of the internship, and you can go from there. But even if you don't find this page, it shouldn't stop you from reaching out and finding out if you can be an intern anyway. Because one of the great things about the Erasmus traineeship is that there is funding attached. So it's not meant to cover every expense you could have, but it is a good thing to get you to some place that you wouldn't have necessarily been otherwise. So I called it cold emailing, but basically it's what to do if you find a place that you'd like to do an internship and you don't see that they're already taking interns, or they don't have a posting about it or something like that. I've done it a few times, including where I am now at the European Public Law Organization, or just EPLO. They had, as I was researching the organization, I saw that they had taken interns in the past. It was very clear, but because of COVID, because of everything going on in the world, I wasn't sure if they still were. So I started out by just sending them an email that says, hello, I'm a student, here's who I am. I would really like to do an internship with you. Are you taking interns? Is it possible to live there? Is it possible to work in the office, or is everything on work from home? Any information would be really appreciated. And this is just a basic email, but it was kind of my way to get in touch with someone who might be able to answer my questions. And eventually that person who replied is the person who I had the interview with. So that was a good place to start. Also, in the past, not for this, but for another internship, I wrote a cold email that they had never indicated they were looking for an intern. But again, if you write this email, it's going to be yourself, introduce what you study, why you're interested in what this organization or this company is doing, and why they might be interested to have an intern in the first place. So if you mention that you have lots of experience in editing and editing photos and I don't know, whatever your experiences are, kind of sell yourself, and don't be intimidated by the fact, because the worst case situation is that they just don't reply or they say no thanks. You don't lose anything. It's worth putting yourself out there, because a lot of, especially smaller organizations, would actually love to have an intern. They just hadn't considered it. So don't be afraid to reach out and email. And really, one of the things I would encourage is to start doing this really as soon as possible, because the whole process goes very quickly and there are a lot of moving parts. So between waiting for emails, because some people take a really long time to reply and they're interested, but they just have a lot of other things to do as well. Then for most places, you'll have to have at least some kind of interview, if not multiple interviews. If it's a bigger organization that's used to hiring a lot of interns, they might have their own application forms. Where I'm working now, I had to do their standardized application process in addition to all of the Erasmus things. You want to save yourself time to arrange travel. You want to make sure that your Czech residency is going to be sorted while you're gone. So just taking care of that as early as possible. And I would also recommend, as soon as you start looking at an internship in another country, research what the residency or visa requirements would be, so that you don't have to wait, because you want to be ready as soon as you have all the required paperwork or documents in order to file an application for a residence permit or visa. If you're not from the EU, you should be ready to send that in the second you can, just to make sure that nothing holds you back or stops you from getting there on time. And as you're doing all of these different things, a huge piece of advice I would say is to keep everyone connected, everyone who's involved, because most people will have an internship supervisor, the person who is actually in charge of the logistics. In some cases, as in my case, you'll also have an internship mentor, so the person who is really your work supervisor, not the supervisor of the internship itself, right? So if I have a travel question or a logistics, I contact one person. If I have a question about my tasks, it's a different person. So both of those people need to be looped in and involved. For every department in the Faculty of Social Studies, I know there is some person who is in charge of Erasmus coordination. They need to be involved. They need to know how long you're going to be there, what you're doing and everything, because eventually they'll need to assign you a credit value for that. So again, making sure that you're not throwing this on them at the last minute, and then everybody's going to need to sign each other's documents. So even if you don't need someone for one specific stage of the process, it's a good idea to still update that person on what else is happening, because eventually it's going to come back to them and you want to make sure that they are ready. So as you go, as you get the documents, you'll see the people that are involved, but really make sure that from the beginning, everyone who needs to be involved is, and that there are these open lines of communication. Yeah. And now Erin can tell a little bit more about the actual, what that process looks like, because I know this sounds very confusing, but yeah, hopefully that's more clear.
I forgot to unmute myself. I'm sorry. So yes, thank you, Emma, for all that. I just wanted to say, because I saw one question ask if someone can ask a question here. Please use the chat to write questions, and we will answer them. Just when we're done, this is our last official slide. So if you have any questions, then I will. Then we'd be happy to answer them after this. So we wanted to give you a way to look at the timeline, not just how Eva has been describing it up to now, but kind of a point-by-point step. So we would first recommend that you make sure to research your internship options first. Like Eva explained, like different ways of how you can do that, Googling internships, using some databases, all that. But that's kind of the first thing, right? Like, is there anything that you want to do? But then almost immediately or at the same time, you want to make sure that you check the deadlines for the funding, because you don't want to apply for an internship with the requirement to have the funding, and then you realize that the deadline has already passed. So you just kind of want to keep these deadlines in mind, the deadline to apply for internships, but also the deadline for funding. And we discussed that a little bit earlier. If you joined us afterwards, it's also on the website. The CZS website is really kind of fabulous with all the detailed information for both the Erasmus Plus traineeships and also the free mover ones. So definitely you can find more information there. Then you want to, once you say like, yes, great, I found internships I like, the deadline still works, I have enough time to complete the process, I am still an active student, I will be an active student by the time I know the decision, then we would encourage you to apply for the internship and start that communication process with your Erasmus coordinator about the plan. And that was also what Eva was discussing a little bit as well. Once you get accepted, then there'll be some more paperwork to do. So that's when you'll say like, hey, Maastricht University, I found an internship. I would like to apply for the Erasmus Plus traineeship funding or for the free mover funding. Here's the learning agreement here, and here's the next steps. If you are ever confused about the process, you can definitely reach out to your Erasmus coordinator in your department or to Dagmar Hababa at FSS. If you're not an FSS student, then to whoever is the appropriate person in your faculty. And they will definitely say like, okay, now you want to do this. Here's the next steps. Here's all the people that you need to communicate with. The general thing, definitely make sure that you are aware of all the aspects. A couple other things that I realized that I did not emphasize enough earlier is that the traineeship, in order to get the funding, has to be connected to your academics. So you can say, okay, I'm studying conflict and democracy studies, and I'm going to do an internship on photography. And I don't know, maybe if your photography is in a conflict area, then maybe then it's connected and then it kind of makes sense. But there needs to be some connection to your actual field of studies. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think with a lot of our fields of study, actually, at the Faculty of Social Studies, there is some wiggle room. So if you're studying sociology, that doesn't mean, oh, I have to do research in sociology, but it does have to be somewhat connected to your studies, and you need to be able to explain why this is connected to what you are studying. So those are just a couple things for you to definitely keep in mind. The other thing that...
Before you move on there, and actually, if anyone is thinking about it, as in my case, it's a really good chance to build off of your studies. So yeah, I don't study law and I've never studied law, but I do have an interest in building some kind of background in it. And I didn't talk about this before, but I study conflict and democracy. There's definitely overlap with what I do in terms of public law and making sure that people are able to participate in their democracies legally. So it's definitely connected, but a lot of what I actually use in the office is new to me. So that actually, yeah, if you're considering some field that you didn't have a chance to take courses in, that you do want to be able to use in the future when you start a career, I would actually encourage you to look at the edges of your field instead of directly, unless that's what you want. But it's a good opportunity. So yeah, sorry, Erin, please continue.
No, it's a really good point. And I think that that's something that, yeah, definitely should, yeah, we don't want to limit you or confine you at all. Just definitely you want to make sure that it's somewhat connected. Luckily for, I think, the Faculty of Social Studies, there's a lot of ways to say like, okay, I can make this make sense, that this is connected to what I'm doing. Maybe if you are studying medicine, it's a little bit harder to make an argument for something else, but who knows? Not me, that's for sure. The other thing I want to emphasize is related to tuition. So the reason why I want to emphasize this is that for most of our international students, that means that you pay tuition. And if you go and do an internship during the semester, you may need to continue paying tuition. It's different for every faculty. It's different for some programs, and the amount is probably different. The Faculty of Social Studies does offer a tuition stipend, and that will kind of depend on your exact situation. So please communicate with us in the future, but this is just also something that we believe it's important for you to keep in mind as you are making your plans. So I'm happy to see that we have some questions. So I just want to reemphasize that Eva and I will answer the questions now, but if you have more questions, feel free to write them in the chat. So Eva, the first question is for you, so I will put it on the screen.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit, but just to give a more thorough explanation, I did not specifically have any reason to meet my specific supervisor. There's no connection to Mooney, and through the process, I found out that nobody from Mooney has ever done an internship here before, at least not through one of the official formats. So basically, when I contacted the organization where I'm working now, I just asked them if they are taking interns, what the process is going to look like, and if everything is normal during COVID. And the person who replied to me is the person who is in charge of supervising interns at this organization. So in a smaller organization, I've done an internship before, there wasn't really a person whose job that was. There was just someone who would be able to take responsibility and make sure that I was doing everything right. But really, that's going to be a question that you ask depending on the organization. Again, if it's larger, there's probably someone. If it's smaller, someone will just do it. But there's usually no connection between specific supervisors and Mooney, as far as I know, unless someone in your department has some specific recommendation or something like that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. If you have a good connection with any professors, it does not hurt to tell them that you're interested in an internship and see if they have any places to start. But the official policy, we can say, is that it's really an independent search for students. So it is kind of on you to find the internship that you think will meet your goals and needs the best. And that's just, yeah, there's not an official thing normally like that. So then the next question, I think I'll probably answer. It probably makes the most sense. But yeah, you can definitely say, okay, it's my third semester. I want to do an internship during this semester, and that is possible. In general, extending your studies is feasible at the university, but with anything, you really need to talk with your program guarantor, some people in your department, just to make sure that that will be okay. And again, we just want to emphasize that that means that you probably would then have an extra semester of paying tuition as well, depending on the agreement that you personally make. So that's kind of the main thing that I want to emphasize is that pretty much any possibility is open, as long as you start the process early enough to talk through the options and you just kind of understand any of the side effects that might come from that. I don't know if ever you have anything.
Yeah, also, the way we presented it and the way I did it, it sounds like this is how it goes sometimes, but it is possible to do this during your normal study period because you do get ECTS for the number of hours. Yeah, there's like a formula. It's a little bit different in different cases, but still you do get credit, so you do count as a student. So if you plan for this long enough in advance and you talk to your department and everything, you can do a full Erasmus internship and it won't affect the actual period of your studies. So if you have time to plan for that, it's maybe worth looking into.
Yeah, definitely if you're in the beginning of your studies, it's really exciting for me that you will start these processes early so that then you can figure out when's the best time to fit it in. But then I also just wanted to add on to what Eva was saying, which is that it left me. I knew that was going to happen. Just that when you are doing the internship, if that is your plan to do it, that you do need to be a current student. So the key thing also to keep in mind is that you're not interrupting your studies. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So you can't say like, okay, I'll do this internship. I want funding and I will not be a faculty of social studies student for that semester. Those three options are not possible. Okay, we have another question, which is great. And it's a really, really good question. And I completely missed mentioning this before, but yes, you are a Maastricht University student, which means you are eligible for the Erasmus Plus funding. It's the same thing as if you wanted to do an Erasmus semester abroad. You are also eligible to do a study abroad semester and get the Erasmus funding for that. So you do not need to be an EU citizen to use the Erasmus Plus internship funding. That goes for the one while you are a student, but then also the Erasmus Plus after graduation. For that one is also eligible for you. So both of those are options that hopefully since we'll take advantage of. And hopefully that answers your question. Again, just because I see some people are joining at from later on, the difference between Erasmus Plus and free mover is mostly based on the country in which you are getting your internship. Erasmus Plus internship is for the 27 EU member states plus 6 additional countries. If you want to do an internship outside of that, you would use a free mover, but you cannot get funding for an internship in your home country or your country of citizenship. So those are the key points. So that was all the questions that I saw coming through here. I think Eva and I can just like think if there's added little tidbits, just we can give another minute in case anyone has something else that they would like to ask last minute. But I just wanted to maybe really emphasize that I think internships are a great way of giving some practical exposure to what you are learning in the classes. Sometimes our students have a hard time finding internships in Brno due to maybe their goals or some language difficulties, but that means that it could really be a great opportunity for you to take advantage of doing interns out in other countries around the world. We did mention that the Erasmus Plus traineeship funding is not eligible for EU institutions, but there's other ways of also kind of getting around that as well if you really want to make sure that you, since we have a lot of politics students, if you really want to intern in some of these institutions, the free mover would be able to help fund that. But then also, when you're searching for internships, we would encourage you to reach out to some of your national governments because maybe they have some representations in Geneva or in Brussels or in some of the other areas in Europe, and they would be able to help get that. So these are unique opportunities also for a lot of our international students to kind of use embassies or NGOs or other such options. So that's maybe my last little tidbit. I will let Eva close out and then we will probably say goodbye.
No, I completely agree with everything Erin just said. I think it's a really good way to, yeah, as I said, in my case, add something that I wasn't able to build during the classroom time. And then also for other people, a good way to just get practical experience before you graduate and start looking for a full-time career. So you have this chance to try something to get a little bit more experience. And also for networking, it's really amazing for just seeing how things work, for, I don't know, being able to get involved in a different community for a while, just see how the rest of the world is treating it outside of the Czech Republic. I think if you have a chance, it's definitely a great idea. So hopefully someone is encouraged.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. We hope that this was useful. And as I put up here, if you have any future questions, you can email Dagmar. I see that someone has one more question, so I will continue talking and then you can ask your question. But in general, yes, like more information can be found at the CZS website. There's lots of information about the step-by-step process of what to do. And if you're looking at specific faculty information, Dagmar Habova is the best location and her email is on our screen. And the question that came through is, do we only have the internship chance for one time? I think you're meaning if you can do it kind of like more than once, like do it in the fall and then maybe another internship in the summer. To be 100% honest, I'm not quite sure. I can, you can write an email to Dagmar and double check that. I think that there might be some limitations. So maybe you can do Erasmus Plus funding one time or, and then do the free mover the second time. It probably depends on your specific situation. And then, and you said, do we have multiple chances to go abroad to study in internship? Yes. Yeah, it's there is some limitations. For example, you might not be able to do. Generally, there's some limitations on how many times you can go abroad during your bachelor's versus if you continue on with your master's, then you get a kind of a second chance of doing things. But the Erasmus study is different than the Erasmus internship. So, for example, if you participate on a semester abroad with the Erasmus study program and then you do a separate internship, then those are considered two different things. But also, this is one of those like very specific things that is I do not deal with on a daily basis. So unfortunately, I would have to look it up on our website, and that would mean that you guys would watch me looking something up on the website. So I would encourage you to email Dagmar, and she will be happy to clarify those regulations. Okay, so I think we will probably conclude our presentation, but we do have office hours now. So on our website under the contact us, you can find the office hours for Dagmar. If you have any future questions, you can stop in and ask her, or you can send her the email. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing some of you guys take advantage of this opportunity. Bye.